Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And one of the big storylines of the Stage 4 Major was which teams are better online and which teams were better in a LAN environment. And Clayster has some very interesting things to say about why Optic Gaming actually probably are better online than they are on LAN due to this server situation, but also why up against FeLo they might indeed have a very hard time. And tweet your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. I thought this was kind of funny from Crimsix first of all, just like any picture of him is it's entertaining at the present time. And well, obviously we're waiting for his video that he comes up with against Huke, and maybe it'll come out sometime this week with any luck indeed, before Stage 5 does begin, of course, back in an online arena for a few weeks. Before then, of course, well, Optic, for example, are going to be playing Atlanta-Faze online. Before then, the Major goes back to LAN for Stage 5, and then, of course, for LAN, for champs with hopefully some fans, whatever exactly happens. Thought this is kind of interesting for relevant stats as well. Stage 4 S&D reports some remarkable stats here, to be honest, from Neptune, a 1.31 KD. I mean, this guy was honestly out of control, averaging 1 kill per round and at least 1 kill in 66% of rounds. Those are #1 stats in the entire league, which is pretty remarkable. Like in terms of multi-kills, #1. So this guy's been out of control. Like, well, I really enjoy little stat dashboard cards like this. So obviously, like we remember a couple of months ago now, Atlanta-Faze versus Optic, there was a big question mark at the time regarding the server situation that Optic found themselves in. They were playing, and we talked about it for quite a while, about like the typo, whatever exactly had caused it, the fact that Atlanta-Faze had played Optic on the Atlanta server. Now, why was that the case? It was certainly up in the air. It seems like the CDL had sent out an email that said, okay, yeah, you're going to be playing them on the Atlanta server. And, well, I think the guys thought that it was going to be corrected. Apparently, Clayster had even reached out to Envoy and said, look, it seems like you guys are going to be playing them on the Atlanta server. If you guys don't get in contact with them about that, then you might have to fix something up. Now, usually, they'll play them on, I'm pretty sure, the St. Louis server. That seems to be what most of the Texas teams play them on. We'll have a look at the map here in a couple of minutes' time. But for whatever reason, Clayster goes on to talk about that Optic have a difficult time on the St. Louis server, that there's something going on there with their like routing or whatever exactly the case is. Not really sure all this, the complications of the internet stuff, but most Texas teams have no problem with that server, but for whatever reason Optic do have problems with it, which means when they play Toronto, for example, Optic actually have something of an advantage, Clayster goes on to say, and well, maybe some other teams in the league as well. However, against FaZe, they well then find themselves in a very difficult situation, because we saw some of the responses at the time. As Formal says, obviously we got smoked, doesn't help, we played on an Atlanta host, all of us on 33 ping, theirs were 11 at the time. So these are kind of some of the discussion, I'm sure, from the Optic guys thinking, alright, when we get to LAN, when these complications are no longer an issue, then it won't be a problem anymore. Maybe that will be the case against FaZe, right? We didn't see them get to play against FaZe in a LAN environment, and who knows what could have happened there, right? Because FaZe weren't having their best weekends. They obviously won the tournament, but they were certainly vulnerable, right? We saw against Toronto Ultra, they certainly could have lost. I mean, that game 3 especially was pretty remarkable. Against Dallas Empire, going game 9 with them, especially given how deep FaZe's map pool is, and Dallas don't really have, well, haven't had too much of a chance to really bring their map pool out as of yet, I suppose, with only a couple of weeks with Vivid and focusing on improving rather than expanding their map pool like a team like FaZe has been, that have been together for the entire season. And well, this is what Envoy says, right? Unacceptable, as we said at the time, and as Clayster says, tried to warn you in the rep chat 3 days ago about this type of stuff, brother. So of course, like, Dallas Empire awaiting the return of LAN, as they do indeed say, and I'll share these couple of clips that come out last night from, well, it was Zuma's stream actually a couple of days ago after the flank concluded, where well, Clayster has to talk about exactly, well, the situation where it's somewhat strange with Optic, that most of the teams based in Texas have no issues with this St. Louis server. For whatever reasons, Optic do, and therefore that actually gives them some advantage against some of the other teams in the league, but against Atlanta-Faze, it's probably a disadvantage for them.
Yeah, it is a waste of time, and that's what we've been dealing with, because a lot of teams we practice against are centrally located, and Sim usually gets first like half the teams.
Yeah.
And so the practice is worthless.
No, ever since I lost Connor is when my advantage was gone.
Yeah.
Because when we had Connor, like, it's like we'd get screwed over in practice, but we'd make up for it in matches. But now that we had the 3-1 split, they were just like, yeah, you're chalked. Like, you can just
like the lobby's better for 7 people and slightly bad for you, or it can be okay for you and okay for like slightly bad for everyone else. And
I mean, it is what it is. People saying Optic Online, but to be fair, like they're centrally located, so it's like you're trying to make it as fair as possible, but there's just certain teams like you can't play. Like it's not gonna make sense. Like it's
that's
just
how
a
it
waste
was
of time.
for a while.
Dude,
Yeah.
the Optic thing is weird, right? Because they're in Frisco, which is 40 minutes north of Dallas. Everyone in Dallas, if you're like 100 Thieves or Minnesota, when they had like those teams that have people all in Dallas, when you play Toronto, that it's in Toronto, you play on a St. Louis server, which you would think would be better for the Texas people, but it's actually significantly better for the Toronto people, right? So you're like, okay, like, that's where you normally play. But for some reason, Optic, like, never plays on the St. Louis server ever. And apparently, like, we asked about it, they get, like, bad routing to that St. Louis server. So they end up playing, like, Toronto on an Atlanta server or something, or a Denver server. And that just seems weird to me. Like, we're 40 minutes away, and it might just be some, like, networking, you know, issue stuff. But, like,
ISPs, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, you know, whatever and that is, like, what has been said the case, like, the technical case behind it is. Because, like, now, since we're on PC, they can run, like, literally, like, direct, you know, network analysis and figure out what is the best for everybody in the lobby without, we don't have to tell them, hey, our ping is 35, you know, like, they can see it. So it's kind of weird because although they're in Texas, they end up getting, like, kind of favored with some of the servers they play on, because St. Louis is, like, the quote-unquote bad server for Texas teams against everyone up there. But we play on it all the time.
Yeah,
and they
that
don't.
matchup against Atlanta happen because they don't play St. Louis?
Yeah, probably.
So this discussion, of course, does get rather interesting when they go up against Dallas Empire this past weekend and have a very difficult performance, right? They lose 3-0 in this first match. They lose 3-1 in their rematch that they had later on in the bracket. So not the ideal stuff. And I'm sure the Optic guys are really expecting to go back to LAN and have a great showing. And we did talk about that, like the excuses factor now that now we are back, of course, in this, on this LAN environment, at least for the majors, that it's difficult to come up with any other reasons why you lost other than just maybe you need to improve as a squad, right? Now, at the end of the day, we are going back to online. And this is part of the concern, really. And this is why these discussions about online that Clayster's talking about, right, that they had some issues playing with Hydra early on or playing with Asim, for example, as he says, the fact that when Asim was in Toronto, and I'm pretty sure Asim mentioned, maybe it wasn't in the clip, maybe it was, that when he had DiamondCon on the team earlier this season, who's also based in Canada, then that gave him a reasonable opportunity, because it meant that the average ping situation for the CDL when they figure out what server they're going to put the teams on for the matches was actually okay, because it was somewhere in between where Clayster and co were based up in Texas, and then the other guys in Canada, they found something that made sense. But for Asim then, in terms of like average ping, it means he kind of gets screwed over. So, well, he's obviously now in Texas, so great situation for them all around, I'm sure, and I'm sure New York are going to be loving it most certainly. But on the Optic Gaming side of things, not exactly the ideal result that they were looking for, and still, we are still online. This is the concern to me, because at the end of the day, we would love to be in a situation where like none of these concerns are ever talked about ever again, but the problem is they are going to be, because for at least for stage 5, the regular online play is still online, so that they've still got to deal with that, right? And maybe that's better for Optic in some senses, maybe that's worse for Optic in other senses, because they're going to have to play Atlanta-Faze, and obviously that's a big game, right? And if you can upset Atlanta-Faze, if you can get a victory there, that's something that's huge for you, right, in terms of qualifying for your group, because we said yesterday it's not going to be so easy for Optic to qualify out of this group. There's a lot of talented teams in their Group A. We'll look at in a couple of minutes' time here. So I would just love that this online discussion never has to be had ever again, but of course it has to be, and who knows if next season, like the regular group play stage matches, whatever they happen to do, are going to be online anyway. They might just do them on LAN, or they might just do them online again, sorry, and just have the majors on LAN. Who knows what they're going to do, right? I mean, they may well go down this route because it might be easy for them to do. As Von was talking about, you know, players having, well, sent a shiver down their spine when players saw the LAN stuff indeed returning. But, well, it didn't really work out for Optic this past weekend, and maybe that's partly due to the situation that Clayster is talking about with this online situation. So this is what the map looks like at the very least. So Dallas over here, of course. Frisco, as Clayster says, like 40 minutes or so south of Dallas, but pretty close to Dallas. Now, the Atlanta guys are, of course, over here. And, well, as you can see, if you're playing Atlanta on an Atlanta server, that's not going to be too ideal for you. But if you're playing Toronto or if you're playing Atlanta, the St. Louis server is pretty ideal for most teams. So most of the teams that are based in Texas, which is a lot of them, like Minnesota, for example, the Dallas guys, of course, Los Angeles Thieves. I mean, I think most of the Seattle guys are there. I think pretty sure Paris are there as well. A load of other teams are down there. I'm pretty sure like 8 out of the 12 teams are down there. So pretty much all of them have no issues with the St. Louis server, which gives them a pretty fair ping differential between Toronto. But for whatever reason, it doesn't really work for Optic. They have to go some sort of other workarounds, which maybe is better for them, maybe is worse for them. Depends exactly who they are playing at the time. But as you can see right here, this is the group that Optic have to find themselves in. Now, they're playing Los Angeles Thieves. They're playing subliners. So they don't have to play the Ultra, which of course is part of the discussion. All the subliners guys are now there in Texas. So really not too much of an issue. If you're the Optic team, or if you're like any of the Texas teams based in Texas playing against a team from Texas, probably not too much difference. But against Atlanta FaZe, because they're based in Atlanta, it's kind of interesting, right? And I mean, if Optic just continue to have these issues, as Clayster kind of discussed there at the end, I'm pretty sure it was Ben that mentioned, like, is that why you reckon they have some issues against FaZe? And maybe that is indeed the case. So, of course, look, their group's going to be tough. I wonder if any of these teams can get an upset over FaZe. That, of course, is the ideal, right? Because if you get an upset over FaZe, you could be pretty confident you're going to make your way through the bracket, because getting top 3 here is going to be tough. I think that Paris and London are probably going to find them. I mean, it's going to be so tough for them to make it top 3 in this group and make it to the winners bracket on LAN of the major. But one of these 4 teams is not. And, well, of course, on paper, you would say maybe Los Angeles Thieves with less practice or whatever coming in. But, I mean, still, who knows what's going to happen? This is their team they want to put together for the final stretch of the season. I think Drazah's great. I think John could be very serviceable. Slasher and Kenny, of course, have been, well, they can be phenomenal players. So, not a team to overlook by any means. And then you've got New York back with the team. You've got FaZe there, who obviously are FaZe. So, I think that Optic have a tough task on their hands, especially if against Atlanta FaZe, they continue to have a very difficult time of things. A couple of things I thought were very interesting to finish off the video. Speaking of this whole LAN discussion, right, given that we talked about ILLey, who, if anything, was one of the most improved players going from well, online to LAN. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal this past weekend for what they needed him to do. Just thought this is incredible. Like, look how quickly he kills Tupac across the map here. I've never seen anything like this. He 4-shots him, like, all 4 shots to the head, I think. Just, I mean, wow, I don't understand how he killed him so quickly. He was full health all the way across the map to the Optic ground for the tractor, and it, well, just takes him down no problem at all. I thought I got sniped, says Tupac, but, well, still, ILLey pretty confident that when he goes back to LAN again, he'll be, well, on top form. And it was really interesting to see how much better he got on LAN, to be honest, compared to the online stuff we've seen from him so far this season, when, well, historically, he's been a pretty good online player. Let's say that for the very least. And just to finish off with this, I thought it was very interesting that, well, Octane's, well, one of Octane's burners, let's just say, points out to me here, Matt Scump is talking about potential map voting in league play right here. Now, I like the idea, I suppose. I think, well, maybe for 4 stacks or something, as he's saying, like, maybe we do it kind of how the pros do vetoes, which could be kind of cool. I don't know how long it would take, and I want it to be a banner protect situation where it takes half an hour to just do the map voting or whatever. So maybe you could do it somehow when the countdown's going or something, so that it doesn't actually waste any additional time. Now, if there's like not a 4 stack, like if it's just like 2 players and, you know, a couple of other people thrown in, maybe it gets too complicated. I also don't really want people just to be able to choose what maps they play in the way that, like, they can just avoid all the maps they're not particularly good at. I don't really know. There's some discussion about that maybe it should be randomized so that you actually, if you are like a top tier player or whatever, obviously the ranking in this game is pretty bad anyway, but in theory, if you are a top tier player, you should be able to have to be good at all the maps rather than just like choosing maps that you want to play. Maybe not, I don't really know, but I thought I'd mention it for you guys. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section about, as always, on all this stuff, and maybe Matt Sconcer will figure out a way to deal with this in league play going forward. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm. Like, you enjoy this content, other people like you may enjoy this content as well, and I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you guys, as always, take care, and I will see you next time.